Over the last 2 years, this studio has seen a lot of change. I started with a blank room, turned it into this, and eventually it evolved into what it is today. A highly functional creative space that, let's be honest, is packed to the brim, but I promise there's a reason for everything. And that all starts right when you walk in the door with this phone jail thing. Look, I don't know about you all, but I find when I get on social media, it's really hard for me to get off these days. And in a place where I'm trying to be productive and get work done, I had to come up with a solution, and this was it. It's essentially an overkill pulley design. When I walk into the studio, I put my phone in jail, put my keys on the key hook, move it down to the work commence section, and that raises the phone to the ceiling. That way, when my phone is up at the ceiling, it's out of sight, out of mind. It just adds that extra little layer of resistance that makes me not want to be on my phone all the time. And then when I'm ready to leave, I can just simply lower the keys back down to the work complete section, get my phone, and head out for the day. And yes, I know there are a lot of easier solutions out there for this, things like the Brick, for example, where you can just tap your phone to it and it disables all of your distracting apps. But honestly, this was just a lot more fun to make. And that whole project was built using these guys right here, the Bambu Lab H2D and the H2S. These are two of the largest printers that Bambu Lab has to offer. And honestly, they just enable so much. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't planning on having two massive printers in here. I initially asked for the H2D, which Bambu Lab sent out. It has laser cutting, 3D printing, a bunch of other things, basically an all-in-one personal manufacturer. But then Bambu Lab asked me if I wanted to do a campaign around the launch of the H2S a couple months later. This thing is awesome. It has the largest build volume of any of the 3D printers Bambu Lab has to offer. So of course I had to say yes, and now I have two of these in the studio. I've said it before and I'll say it again, 3D printing is just an incredible tool that allows you to do so much. I just love the fact that you can print solutions to problems you might have in an afternoon, and you'll see as we go around the studio here that I've done that a lot. And then on top of both printers, I also have the new AMS2 Pro. These not only do automatic material selection, but also active drying now as well. The AMS2 Pro gets up to 65 degrees when drying filament, which is pretty good, but I've also been doing a lot of polycarbonate lately for a 3D printed PC project that will hopefully be coming soon. So for that, I've been using the AMS HT. That dries up to 85 degrees. It can feed right into the printer. It's also super helpful for things like TPU. And between the two of them, I can print pretty much anything. And all of this is sitting on a Husky workbench. This thing is rock solid. It has wheels if I ever want to move it around. It's height adjustable. And I store a lot of things in these drawers here, things like 3D printing tools or other bits of hardware, just to kind of keep the studio clean. And yes, I know underneath of here is a complete mess. I'm still working on a better solution for this, but for now, this is kind of where I keep a lot of the larger boxes and PC builds and things like that. Now, speaking of keeping things clean, I do have this robot vacuum right here, but I'm not gonna lie, I never use it. Honestly, it's just a bit overkill. This is like a 230 square foot studio, so most of the time I'll just end up sweeping, but it is nice if I wanna mop the floors. I do try to keep things in here pretty meticulously organized though, and a lot of that is thanks to this storage system. This area here was one of the first things I put up nearly 2 years ago, and it's fully stood the test of time. The whole thing is from IKEA. We've got some IKEA storage cabinets below, and then the top is this IKEA Boxel system, I think is how you say it, but these are essentially just fully modular shelves that you can adjust and take off at any time, which is really nice if I ever want to, say, move the shelves around for taller items versus smaller ones. That being said, it hasn't really changed much since I first put it up, but I like to keep it so that each level has a specific purpose. The main area I try to keep pretty clean. I just have a couple fun things like my play button and the A1 Mini, which I'm actually planning to move to my home setup eventually. And then above that, you'll find my camera gear. The goal here was for it to be very grab and go, no rummaging through drawers or looking through boxes, things like that. Everything that I need to make my videos right within an arm's reach. The section above that is dedicated to things that I've picked up over the years that I really appreciate, either from trips that I've been on or products that I really like. Just some fun things to liven up the space. And then at the very top, we have all my labeled toolboxes. Again, very grab and go style, just things that I would need on a day-to-day basis to make my videos. Now, typically in the middle of the studio these days, I have this floating desk. This actually used to be where the printers are now, but I found myself using it more and more for filming, so I repurposed it to just kind of live permanently here in the middle of the studio. There's nothing too crazy going on here. This is just a Home Depot birch butcher block on some heavy-duty standing desk legs, and then I added caster wheels to them so you could move this around. But yeah, I found myself using this a lot lately for things from unboxings to top-down shots to even just as an extra surface for things like PC builds or DIY projects, which I found myself doing a lot more of recently, which is why I went ahead and built this area. Now, this section is entirely new from the last studio tour. Some of you might remember that I actually had a full desk setup in this corner, which I really liked, but ultimately it was kind of overkill. I didn't actually end up using it that often, so I ended up moving that desk home and replaced it with these IKEA uproar workbenches. You'll notice that this area is also kind of split into sections. On the left here, we have my first 3D printer, the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, which I still absolutely love, and then a soldering station, as well as some tools and other things on the pegboard above. Again, all within arm's reach for quick access. I left the middle section pretty open, mostly to have a dedicated space for either working on things or filming. And then I store all of my filament and larger things like my drill or extra PC cases down below. I do still have a desk, but I've massively downsized it to this little area here, and it honestly might be one of my favorite places in the studio. I do all my editing on this M3 Max MacBook Pro, so here we have a studio display that I can easily Thunderbolt into, as well as the Magic Keyboard, Magic Mouse, and Magic Trackpad, just to keep everything nice and frictionless. Now, this is actually my first time experiencing the studio display. Apple actually sent all of this out for me to test out, which is kind of surreal to me. But I gotta say, it's pretty awesome. Experiencing things like editing or watching content at a 5K resolution is just stunning. The colors and contrast are great. It has built-in speakers, so I don't always have to use headphones. Honestly, it's just a lot of fun to work on. That being said, it's not all perfect 60 Hz IPS panel. I think for anything outside of editing or productivity work, I'd still want to use another monitor. But if we can see a bump up in specs on the next generation, I would love to have a reason to just main this all the time. Now, next to the desk setup is the dedicated camera gear storage wall. This actually used to be a coffee bar area, but I've since been making that at home. So I decided to repurpose it into this storage wall, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. All of the mounts here for the gear are 3D printed from various sources, things like Printables or Maker World. And again, similar to the shelving system, it keeps on that theme of having everything out and open in a grab and go format. It makes it super easy to just get what I need and go make my videos. I do also have this little Togo chair. This is basically where I'll sit and edit or script if I'm not sitting at my desk area. And I also keep some of my spare lights stored here when I'm not using them. All the lights in the studio, by the way, are made by the same company, a company called Amaran. They're not crazy expensive. They're also not super cheap. I like them because they're controllable straight from your phone, so if you want to switch up the vibe for filming, it's super easy to change the color temperature, the color themselves, depending on the light that you have. But yeah, they've been rock solid for me, and I use them for everything. Over time, I think I realized that having a functional, organized space is just as important, if not more important, than having an aesthetic one. And while there will probably always be another inch of space that I can try and squeeze out of this place, I'm really happy with how it's all come together.